Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. And today, we're talking about a massive shift in how we understand personality. It's about a missing piece of the puzzle that honestly changes everything.
All right, so for the longest time, psychologists thought they had personality all figured out, mapped out with 5 key traits. But what if I told you they were missing something huge, something crucial? We're going to get into the story of how scientists stumbled upon this missing link, and it's a pretty fascinating tale. So, for decades, right, the absolute gold standard for understanding personality was this model called the Big Five. Now, these Big Five factors, they weren't just invented out of thin air. They were discovered through this really systematic study of language. And for years, everyone thought these 5 dimensions, stuff like extraversion, conscientiousness, could pretty much sum up anyone's personality. It was this neat, tidy little package. And the way they found them was super rigorous. It's called the lexical study method. Basically, they'd take a dictionary, pull out every single adjective that could describe a person's personality. Then, they'd get tons of people to rate themselves on all those words. And finally, they'd use some fancy statistical analysis to see which of these hundreds of traits naturally group together. That's how they landed on the 5 big factors. But of course, the story doesn't end there. Just when the Big Five seemed totally locked in, a breakthrough came from a place nobody really expected. So get this, a couple of researchers are working on a study using Korean personality adjectives. And while they're reanalyzing their data, kind of procrastinating on writing up their paper apparently, they just get curious. They think, what would happen if we told the computer to look for 6 factors instead of the usual 5? And boom, what they found was pretty mind-blowing. A super clear, really consistent 6th factor just appeared. On one side, you had words like truthful, honest, sincere. And on the other, words like sly, calculating, hypercritical. This was a whole new dimension of personality that the Big Five had totally overlooked. And you might be thinking, okay, maybe that's just a thing in the Korean language. But nope, they checked other studies, French, Polish, Italian, you name it. And this 6th factor just kept showing up again and again. They realized this wasn't some random fluke. They'd found a universal missing link in personality. So this massive discovery led to a brand new framework, the HEXACO model. See what they did there? It's an acronym. You've got H for honesty, humility, and then the other 5. Emotionality, extraversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and openness. The Big Five, plus this crucial new H factor. Okay, so let's really dig in and meet the H factor. What is honesty, humility? What does it actually look like in real life? The best way to get it is to see it in action. Let's take a look at this tale of 2 law students. You've got Mary. For her, law is like a martial art. It's all about defeating opponents so she can make a ton of money. She has absolutely no problem using flattery to get on her professor's good side. Then you have Jane. She sees law as a way to actually achieve justice, to help people. The whole idea of sucking up to someone to get ahead, it would just make her feel wrong. Or how about this one? The tale of 2 husbands. We have Bill. He's been having a string of affairs because he genuinely believes that as a successful guy, he's entitled to that kind of excitement. And he's got to be pretty crafty to keep it all a secret. But then there's Dave. He's never cheated on his wife. Sure, he might find other women attractive, but he just could not bring himself to betray her trust like that. So what you're seeing here is the H factor. It's the core difference between these pairs. Jane and Dave, they're high on the honesty-humility scale. They're all about being fair and genuine. Mary and Bill, they're on the low end. They have this willingness to exploit others, to bend the rules, all for their own personal gain. Let's break it down a little more. People who are high in honesty, humility, they tend to avoid manipulating others. They're fair, they're law-abiding. Wealth and luxury just aren't that big of a deal to them. And really importantly, they don't see themselves as superior. On the flip side, folks low in honesty, humility, well, they'll flatter you, pretend to like you to get what they want. They're willing to bend the rules, they crave money and fancy things, and they have this powerful feeling that they're entitled to special treatment. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Understanding the H factor is kind of like getting a secret decoder ring for human behavior, especially when you start combining it with the other personality traits. So let's play with a few combinations, shall we? What do you get when you take someone with low honesty, humility, and you add in a big dose of high extraversion? You get narcissism. Yeah. Think about it. That feeling of entitlement and willingness to use people, combined with being socially confident and outgoing, that's the recipe. These are those really charming, charismatic types who crave power and have no problem using it for their own personal gain.
All right, next combo. What happens if you take that same low honesty humility, but this time you mix it with low emotionality? That means someone who doesn't feel much fear or anxiety or even empathy for other people.
That combination, that's greed without fear. These are the people who are just hungry for fame and fortune. They're willing to take huge risks to get status, and they are completely unfazed by any harm or suffering they might cause along the way.
Okay, so why should you care about all this? Well, once you understand the H factor, you can start to see the signs. You can learn what to look for when it comes to low H personalities out in the wild.
Now, no single one of these is a smoking gun, right? You have to look for a pattern. But keep an eye out for stuff like bragging about beating the system or breaking the rules, or, those over-the-top displays of wealth and status. Another big one is that above-the-law mentality, like the normal rules just don't apply to them. Or notice if someone is super nice, but only to people who are useful to them. That's a huge tell.
But here's maybe the most important takeaway of all. Unlike a lot of personality traits that are pretty much set by our genes in our childhood, the H factor might be different. The research suggests it also depends on our own free will, and that's a really powerful idea. It means your level of honesty, humility isn't just something you're stuck with. It's something you can choose every day. Which really leaves us with one big question, doesn't it? Who do you choose to be?